A tradition that has been going on since basically the beginning of pit stops is now coming to an end. Yo, what's up everyone, my name is Jericho from NASCAR on MDK and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Lines. We've got two big stories regarding the future of NASCAR, one with the next-gen car and a part of the next-gen car that we know will be confirmed next year in 2021. And as our breaking news story of the day, NASCAR has announced earlier today that the traditional 5 lug nut design on the tire set for both for trucks, Xfinity and the Cup Series, that will be no more, at least for the Cup Series. Starting in 2021, the Cup Series will now go from a traditional 5 lug nut design to a now 1 lug nut design. Now there is a whole 3-page article on this thing. You know it's big when I have to print stuff out and I have to actually highlight to make sure you get everything that you need to know. There was a lot of backlash when NASCAR first announced this. A lot of people were calling NASCAR out or saying how, oh, you know, we want to get back to the fans, or we want to do what the fans say, and they do something that, number one, is not like the production cars on the road, because that was one of NASCAR's big reasons for the next-gen car, was that it would be closer represented to the cars you see on the road. Well, the production cars, at least with the Mustang, Camry, and Camaro, they also use traditional 5 lug nuts. Some were saying it takes away from the sports character or the sports tradition. Some were also talking about, even including me, when I first heard of this change, I did not like it. I thought this took away from the importance of pit stops. I thought this is going to take away also from the pressure, because usually with those 5 lug nuts, I mean, it puts major amounts of pressure and allows the people on pit road to shine brighter to make sure they get all 5 lug nuts perfect, or at least much faster than their opponents. With it now being just 1 lug nuts, it's not going to really mean that much of a difference. You just go, done. Simple as that. It's not going to require as much skill as it would take with a traditional 5 lug nut design. But we're now going to get into the article to find out the reason as to why NASCAR made the decision. So we're going to read off a couple quotes, starting with from John Probst, who is NASCAR's Senior Vice President of Innovation and Racing Development. He said that the move away from a 15-inch steel wheel was part of an overall goal to provide more relevance and a stronger correlation to today's production cars with an 18-inch wheel, but that a strong enough fastener that could hold up under high-speed conditions was a necessity. So it looks like with the change from the 15-inch to the 18-inch, and with the amount of the higher torque that the next-gen car would use, NASCAR believed that a single lug nut would keep the tire together, or at least keep it together to the car, a lot more safer, I guess you could say, than with the traditional 5 lug nuts. For us, we felt like from a standpoint of the wheel is that we want to get to an 18-inch wheel, an aluminum wheel, Probst said. Once you get to an 18-inch aluminum wheel, the next step for us is to make sure that from a durability standpoint under racing conditions is that it will accept the durability that we need to finish races and then also finish multiple races. To do that, the single lug nut was our only option. So this is clearly not only just a safety move, it was also a cost move. You saw it right there in the quote. For use not only for one race, but to use also for multiple races. NASCAR has been doing some moves, and are planning to do moves in the future, cost cutting, to make sure that teams don't have to pay so much, to also help the smaller teams. And I think lug nuts, they do cost a lot. I'm pretty sure I read once that it was like $5,000 per nut. Lug nut. I really should not say just per nut. Anyways, $5,000 per lug nut. I think that was I saw that somewhere. I could be completely wrong about that, but that's what I believe. I saw a number when reading about how much they cost, or how much the little things cost for teams. So this would certainly help, specifically if you're going to use those lug nuts for multiple races instead of just one race for Fontana, one for Phoenix, one for Atlanta, one for Homestead, and going through that process. Now, even though there's going to be a change with the lug nuts going from 5 to 1, NASCAR said that they don't expect any wholesome changes to not only how pit road or pit stops are structured, but how they're choreographed. I think from a fan standpoint, the choreography of the pit stop will look unchanged, Probst said. I think that a lot of the times when we say single lug nut, people feel that it's an open wheel style pit stop where people will be on their knees waiting for the car to come in. We don't intend to change anything with respect to how the pit stop flow is executed. There will still be guys coming off the wall. There will still be a premium for that athlete to come off that wall, get to the right side of the car, make that tire change, get over to the left side of the car, and make the tire change. from the look and feel of the pit stop, we don't see any significant changes. Now, a lot of people expected, well, because of it going from 5 to 1, you're going to see it a lot faster now. It's going to be a lot faster pit stops, or at least a faster time frame to get the lug nut tighten on the car. And that's not necessarily the case. Probs continue on with the article saying that with the single lug nut now rule, it's going to require teams to use more torque to fasten the wheel. On the on and off, they still have to keep the gun on. They can't just cap it. It's got to actually ratchet a few times before it actually gets tight, Probs said. So today, good tire changers can take the 5 lug nuts off or put them on in less than a second, say 0.8 of a second to a second. They're going to have to leave the gun on for probably at least half a second or so. If anything, they may be 0.3 quicker here and there, but it shouldn't dramatically change the timing on the pit stop. The steel wheel is a bit more forgiving and can handle loose wheels a little bit better, Probs said. When we get to the aluminum wheel, we did some durability studies, and if you leave lug nuts loose on an aluminum wheel, you reduce the durability of the wheel by around 30%. It's more of the aluminum wheel has less tolerance to loose lug nuts, so when we have one, there really is only one thing to concentrate on, and that is to get that lug nut tight. Then everything else from a durability standpoint is fine. Now with this change, there's also going to be a change to how pit crews get ready during pre-race routines. And usually during NASCAR Cup days or race day, crew members will usually put glue around the lug nuts of the wheel to help speed up the process of getting the lug nuts fastened onto the wheel. Well, when we go to a single lug nut, they're not going to be able to do that. One of the things when you look at a single nut, it actually is retained into the socket. So they'll actually use the same single wheel nut for the entire race and likely multiple races, Probs said. They'll use a single lug the entire time. So the concept of gluing lug nuts to tires goes away, which creates some efficiencies for us. There's times when we have to open up the garage or pit road early on race day for no other reason than for the race team to glue 11 sets of tires. They can just use the wheels as they are without being glued. Okay, so with that, let me just put my article down. So what are my overall thoughts on this? Well, if you saw me on Twitter, my first thoughts was I was not happy with it, did not like it. But now that I'm thinking about it, it might not be so bad. It's going to be very weird. Of course it's going to be very weird. I mean, people might say, oh, it's a change. It's not really going to matter. If you are a big-time NASCAR fan, you will notice it's gonna matter. Maybe to a casual fan that might not watch the sport, or might not be as engaged to the sport as, let's say, I am, for example, they might not care. But for a person like me, who is used to seeing veer, 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 instead of just veer, it's gonna be very weird. So, but in terms from, I understand the reason why now that NASCAR made this move. Number one, cost. Going from 5 to 1, and now it's going to save, like I said, it's going to save on costs, not only for teams, for NASCAR, for everyone really. It's just going to save a good amount of money. Again, I heard 5,000, that could be completely wrong, but it's going to save a good amount of money for the big teams and specifically the smaller teams, which I think that was NASCAR's main objective, is to help the smaller teams. Having be able to use the lug nuts over a period of time throughout a few races, maybe 3 to 4 or so, that's going to help teams a lot with cost savings. It's also going to be interesting in terms of strategy-wise, because NASCAR will not check, like for example, if you notice nowadays, whenever a car wins a race, whenever they come onto pit road, you see a NASCAR official looking at the tires to make sure they are tightened. Well, they're not going to do that anymore starting with 2021. So because of that, that's going to present a new form of strategizing. Do you fully go all in with that tire, or do you risk it maybe? Maybe not go in 100%. If you got, I want to say 2016 or maybe 2017, NASCAR decided to not check to the lug nuts on cars anymore. So you saw teams maybe not go 100%, maybe just 70%, 60%, just to get that bit of an edge on their competition. We might see that come back into play in 2021. So yeah, the more I think about it, before I was not a fan of it, but the more I think about it, the more it's like, it's not that big of an issue. It's going to be weird, but it's not that big of an issue. But overall, that's just my opinion. I know on NASCAR, specifically on Twitter, no one, I think 80 to 90% did not like this change. But surprisingly, when I did a poll on this for about 4 hours or so, 53 of you guys voted. And at the time of this recording, 67.9% of you said yes and 32.1% of you said no. But early on, the no section was winning. Then the yes section started to creep back up. It started to pass. I think that's because later on, as people start to understand it more, let it sink in a bit, they realize, okay, maybe it's not that bad. But yeah, lots of changes in 2021. Already the first thing confirmed, no traditional 5 style lug nuts. NASCAR will be going to just 1 lug nut, just like in other forms of motorsports in Formula 1, IndyCar, IMSA, starting in 2021. Now on to our second story. It's just a quick update around the car as a whole of NASCAR's next-gen car that it will be unveiled during the 2021 season. We are going to be providing updates to the story. Currently right now, NASCAR, they're doing a 2-day test at the Auto Club Speedway with driver William Byron behind the wheel. Now this is the P3 edition of the test car, and according to NASCAR, it's 99% race ready. The reason why they called it a P3 version of the next-gen car was because this is the 3rd process of the development of the car. The first one was used as a wind tunnel test. This did not go on the racetrack at all. The second edition was used at racetracks of Phoenix, Homestead, and Richmond with drivers Austin Dillon, Eric Jones, and one other driver. I think Joey Logano, I want to say. Yes, it was. That was the P2. The P3 now, this is when they're starting to get into the nitty-gritty. Maybe starting to perfect things, you know, these minuscule changes to maybe make sure they're perfect. Again, John Probst commented on this. We're going to be hearing from him a lot in this article, but he talks about with the next-gen car. He says, quote, "When it came time to build our P3 prototype, we tried to take into account all of the things that we want to do with respect to the final car that we're going to race next year as much as we could into this plan. We feel like this car is probably 99% what we're going to compete with next year. And then some of the vendors that we've selected have been able to make parts available that will be identical to what we're racing next year. So it's a mix of things that make it easier to work on, which is probably one of the biggest criticisms of the first car, is that it was difficult to work on. So we implemented a bunch of changes from a mechanic standpoint to make it easier." Okay, that part is kind of interesting. Changes that a mechanic can use. The issue with not only with the COT but also with the Gen 6 car was that the team could not do much. If you look at with the Gen 4 car, the teams, they could do a lot. They could rise the car up. They could, you know, they're able to make changes to the car. But after the Gen 5 car, the COT car, and the Gen 6 car, they were not able to do that. They really had to go inside the lines to try and find somewhat of an advantage. Well, it looks like with this next-gen car, manufacturers and mechanics, they're not able, they have more room, they have more breathing room, they're able to do a lot more that can still stay within NASCAR's rulebook and still be able to be different from their competition. Now, props that the competition officials have implemented new underbody components for the two-day test at Auto Club Speedway as the teams continue to develop the car's aerodynamic characteristics. Now, there are currently 3 more next-gen tests scheduled within 2 months from now. March 16th and 17th will take place at Atlanta, April 6th and 7th at Bristol, and May 4th and 5th at Dover. And all those races will take place the day after NASCAR races at that track. So it'll take place all on Monday. There'll also be a June 2nd and June 3rd test at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Not sure if it's the oval or the road course. That'll take place 2 days after the Cup Series races at Kansas. So you're going to a concrete, very banked track, 1 mile track of Dover. You're then going to a half-mile, very banked track of Bristol, and then going to a very bumpy, old 1.5 mile Atlanta, and then you're going to a rather smooth 1.5 miles of Charlotte. So NASCAR, they're really going to all different types of tracks, from the smoothest of tracks to the bumpy of tracks, to just every form of track that NASCAR can get their hands on. By the end of this year, they're going to go do it. Now, all those tests, I believe, I could be wrong with this, all those tests at those tracks, they're all going to be for single car runs. However, the next step in testing, and in my opinion, the most important part of this process with the next-gen car is going to be a multi-car test session, so that NASCAR can test how the vehicles work together, either in an aerodynamic form or aerodynamic draft, I should say, or by side-by-side. There have been a lot of criticisms with NASCAR's in the COT car, as well as the Gen 6 car, based on how they run side-by-side. And that's what I think we really need to focus on. You know, it's one thing, you can say one thing about the car when you're by yourself. And I think what Austin Dillon said, there's a lot of mechanical grip. Yes, that's good, but you're by yourself. What is a car going to act like when there is a car in front of you, when there's a car behind you, when you're racing side by side, 3 wide, and entering a quarter or on the straightaway? What's a car going to be like? Is it going to have that bubble of air where it's just, when you're drafting up to a car and you just stall? Or are you able to break that bubble of air and, like what you saw in the Gen 4 car, and able to draft up to the back end of another car ahead of you. Or let's say if you're entering a corner side by side, is the car gonna get loose under, is the car on the inside gonna get loose due to side force? What, that's the part we really need to focus on. And that's the part what I'm very interested on. I think a lot of you guys, you're also, if not all of you guys, really only care about how's the car gonna run side by side in traffic, because that's what really matters with the future of NASCAR. It's one thing if how good a race is by itself. That's qualifying. It's only 1 or 2 laps. But how does it race during race time? 2.5 to 3 hours with 38 or I guess now 40 cars in the field. How's it gonna run? And I'm pretty sure NASCAR is gonna do this. Like, how's it gonna run when it's on fresh tires? When at the start of a run, for example, like on a restart. How's it gonna do 50 laps into a run? How you have to find out all these different conditions. Hell, how's it gonna run under the lights? How's it gonna run when it's cloudy? How's it gonna run when it's all sunny? If there's any, if NASCAR, I'm pretty sure NASCAR, they're gonna try and find any sort of condition they can to make sure that they can nail this next-gen car for 2021 and the future. And to close it out, John Probst ends the article by saying, quote, that the multi-car test session is on his radar. I think depending on how this test goes with the P3 prototype Monday and Tuesday, if that all goes well, we could see it as soon as Atlanta, although that is not our primary goal at the moment, Probst said. But certainly by the time we get out of Bristol, Dover, and certainly by the Charlotte test. Yes, NASCAR, it's on the radar to do a multi-car test session on the next-gen car. I was surprised that he said Atlanta. I thought that was very early. I'd say maybe Charlotte, or maybe, if NASCAR were to do a multi-car test, more than likely they're going to do it at a 1.5 mile track, since that's the meat of NASCAR and the schedule, at least at the moment. I say focus on the 1.5 mile tracks, because that has been... that not only is that where a majority of the races are, that's where it's received the most criticism. Maybe then you can focus on the special tracks like the Poconos or your Fontanas, your Michigans, those special tracks, those 2-miler tracks, your Phoenix race tracks, a very odd shape 1.0 or 1.3 mile racetrack, I think Phoenix is. And then you start to get down to the short tracks and the super speedways. So yeah, we're obviously we're gonna learn a lot more about what the car might handle like, or what NASCAR might consider changing with the next gen car after the Monday Tuesday test, and of course we're gonna have a full report on that for you here on Inside the Lines. But that's gonna conclude for this episode of ITL here on MDK. Thank you guys so much for watching. What are you guys' thoughts on any of the stories down below? Are you guys confident about what you've been hearing about the next gen car, or are you guys nervous? Tell me in the comment section down below, as well as your guys' thoughts on the whole 5 traditional lug nut system being gone in favor of the new 1 single lug nut. Again, tell me in the comment section down below. But until next time, my name is Jake Carl from NASCAR on MDK. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.